Hello guys, I'm Michael Angelo Alabaso from BSc 2B, and for today, I'm gonna discuss Environmental Compliance Certificate. But before that, let's discuss first what is EMS, or Environmental Management System. So without further ado, let's go. So first, let's discuss what is EMS, or Environmental Management System. So Environmental Management System, or EMS, is a system and database which integrates procedures and processes for training of personnel, monitoring, summarizing, and reporting of specialized environmental performance information to internal and external stakeholders of a firm. The most widely used standard on which an EMS is based is International Organization for Standardization, or ISO 14001. There are goals of EMS which are to increase compliance and reduce waste. So first, what is compliance? Compliance is the act of reaching and maintaining minimal legal standards. By not being compliant, companies may face fines, government intervention, or may not be able to operate. So while waste reduction goes beyond compliance to reduce environmental impact, the EMS helps to develop, implement, manage, coordinate, and monitor environmental policies. So waste reduction begins at the design phase through pollution prevention and waste minimization. At the end of the life cycle, waste is reduced by recycling, or 5Rs. To meet these goals, the selection of environmental management system is typically subject to a certain set of criteria, which is a proven capability to handle high-frequency data, high-performance indicators, transparent handling and processing of data, powerful calculation engine, customized factor handling, multiple integration capabilities, automation of workflows and QA processes, and in-depth flexible reporting. The features of environmental management system is to serve as a tool or process to improve environmental performance and information, mainly design, pollution control, and waste minimization, training, reporting to top management, and the setting of goals. So, it also provides a systematic way of managing an organization's environmental affairs. The next one is the aspect of the organization's overall management structure that addresses immediate and long-term impacts of its products, services, and processes on the environment. EMS assists with planning, controlling, and monitoring policies in an organization. It also gives order and consistency for organizations to address environmental concerns through the allocation of resources, assignment of responsibility, and ongoing evaluation of practices, procedures, and processes. So, number 5 is to create environmental buy-in form, management and employees, and assigns accountability and responsibility. It also sets framework for training to achieve objectives and desired performance, and helps understand legislative requirements to better determine a product or service impact, significance, priorities, and objectives. It also focuses on continual improvement of the system and a way to implement policies and objectives to meet a desired result. This is also helped with reviewing and auditing the EMS to find future opportunities. Encourage contractors and suppliers to establish their own EMS. Facilitates e-reporting to federal, state, and provincial government environmental agency through direct upload. Next, let's discuss what is the purpose of an environmental management system. All businesses should have an EMS that reflects the regulations and legislation applicable to their specific organization. It is because the EMS manage environmental concerns by implementing policies with clear environmental objectives and targets, and the planning strategies to ensure the business conforms to the legislation. In order for the EMS to successfully identify the necessary measures to take, the organization must be clear about all the different aspects of its environmental impact. Effective planning should include both reference to the objective outlined in the company policy and the detailed understanding of the legal requirements. We have here a figure of Environmental Management System Model of EMS, or the PDCA cycle. The diagram shows the process of first developing an environmental policy, planning the EMS, and then implementing it. The process also includes checking the system and acting on it. The model is continuous because of an EMS is a process of continual improvement in which an organization is constantly reviewing and revising the system. To more understand the PDCA cycle, we have here the different characteristics of planning, doing, checking, and acting. So first, let's discuss the characteristic of planning. We have here initial environmental review, a scoping study to collect baseline information including the legal requirements, aspects, and impacts, current practices, and environmental opportunities. The next one is the environmental policy. It is the statement of commitment and framework for planning and action. The next one is the environmental aspect. Consider environmental attributes associated with activities, products, and services that can generate significant environmental impacts. We have also here legal and other requirements. It is the identification and have access to those regulations to which an organization subscribe and examine how these apply to the environmental aspect. Second to the last is the objective and targets. It is the measurable environmental goals consistent with policy to prevent pollution, comply with legal requirements, and improve performance. The last one is the management program to achieve objectives and targets within given time frames. Next is do or implementing. So we have here resources and responsibilities. It provides resources and delegate responsibilities to facilitate effective management of the system. The second one is training and awareness. It ensures staff understand the environmental policy and its implication, and train to ensure the responsibilities conform to the EMS. The third one is communication. Establish procedures for communicating environmental management issues across the organization and external parties. The next one is documentation. It compile an environmental policy and EMS documentation, including objectives and targets, and related records. The next one is the operational control. It identify and plan operation consistent with policy, objectives, and targets, and establish procedures to ensure these are carried out. The last one is emergency preparedness and response. Identify potential emergency situations and establish procedures for preventing and responding to them. We also have here the characteristic of checking, which is the monitoring and measurement. It establishes procedures to monitor operation that can have a significant environmental impact and evaluate compliance with applicable legal and other requirements. The second one is non-conformance. It introduces corrective and preventive action procedures to deal with non-conformities and review their effectiveness. Second to the last is records. Establish and maintain records of EMS conformity and performance. While the last one is EMS auditing. Periodically assesses the EMS and the records to ensure it conforms to agreed policy aims and it's working as intended. Acting is the last part of PDCA cycle, which has a characteristic of the first one is review. Assesses the EMS, including the results of the internal audit, and compliance with legal requirements to determine its effectiveness. The second one is recommend, agree, and record options for improvement. The last one is actions. Take appropriate step to amend policy and redefine objectives, targets, and other elements of EMS, consistent with the commitment to continual improvement. Now let's move to the main topic of this report, which is the Environmental Compliance Certificate or ECC. So the Environmental Compliance Certificate is a mandatory requirement for the project activities, included in the schedule of EIA notification, dated of 14th September 2006, under Environment Protection Act of 1986. Before initiating any project-related activities on the site, the procedure for obtaining environmental compliance certificate involves the following major steps. But before that, let's discuss what is Environmental Compliance Certificate. Environmental Compliance Certificate refers to the document issued by the DENR EMB that allows a proposed project to proceed to the next stage of project planning, which is the acquisition of approvals from other government agencies and LGUs, after which the project can start implementation. The ECC is typically mistaken to mean Environmental Clearance Certificate because it provides authorization for a project to proceed. However, the correct term compliance refers to the project being compliant with the given requirements. In Memorandum Circular 2018-152, DILG OIC Secretary Eduardo M. Año says the project that pose possible environmental risk or impact are required to secure an ECC from the Department of the Environmental and Natural Resources, Environmental Management Board, DENR EMB. Among such projects are mining, agricultural projects, and golf course construction. Where and how to get Environmental Compliance Certificate, and who are the people involved. The procedure for securing an ECC is as follows. Number 1. The proponent scope the Environmental Impact Assessment or EIA. They must conduct by consulting with the stakeholders of a project, those who will be affected by it, including the public in the vicinity of the project and the DENR experts who will determine the technical aspect of the EIA to be conducted. Before we proceed to the second one, did you know that Environmental Impact Assessment or EIA is the assessment of the environmental consequences of a plan, policy, program, or actual projects prior to the decision to move forward with the proposed action. Number 2. The proponent conducts the EIA study based on the initial scoping, which examines the impacts a project will have on the environment as well as the current state of the environment at the project site. Number 3. An Environmental Impact Statement or EIS is prepared, which is basically the report based on the findings of the EIA study. This also includes plans to mitigate the impacts of the project. Number 4. For large or critical projects, the EIS is reviewed by the DENR EMB and changes or additional information may be requested to improve it. This step is repeated until the EIS meets the DENR EMB standards. It can take a long time if the quality of the EIS prepared is not high. The complexity and trueness of the EIA required is based on the capacity of the project. The last one, or number 5, the final EIS is submitted to the DENR EMB for approval. If the project is eligible, it will be awarded an ECC. In cases where DENR EMB finds that an ECC is not applicable, a Certificate of Non-Coverage or CNC shall be issued confirming that the proposed project is not part of the environmental impact statement and poses no environmental threat. If the project is small but still requires an ECC, a new version of an EIA called an Initial Environmental Examination or IEE checklist may be required instead. Other than those that were mentioned, all projects must secure an ECC. So when will an ECC be issued? An ECC is issued after a positive review of the project's application by the DENR EMB. It indicates that a proposed undertaking will not cause a significant negative impact on the environment. The project proponent must then fulfill the specific measures and conditions indicated in the ECC before enduring the operation of the project and even the project completion. To summarize the ECC discussion, assessment is necessary to be able to get ECC or Environmental Compliance Certificate, and ECC is needed to get building permit, which is provided by the LGU for the project to be able to proceed to the next stage of planning. So that's conclude my discussion. Thank you for listening.